Hello, and welcome to My Favorite Games, a podcast for game designers to geek out about games they like to play. Today, I'm super excited to host Alexander Goldman. Alexander is a UX researcher, board game designer, and creative storyteller currently living in Miami. He went to grad school for game design at Carnegie Mellon University and has been working on Inventures for the past 4 years as a way to bring his three favorite things together: board games, improv, and storytelling. I'm really interested to dig into that in a second. Alexander, though, thanks so much for joining me today.
I'm super excited to be here. I'm really excited, Robert. Thanks.
Before we get into your background, the game that you brought with you today to the veritable desert island is Wingspan. It's incredibly popular, an instant classic. Tell me about it. First off, in case people have been living under a rock, what is it, and what do you love about it?
Yeah, so Wingspan is an engine building game, bird themed. It's a Euro game, so you're mostly playing on your own, but you're playing with other people. It's very peaceful, like visually themed. I think what I like about it is kind of a prompt for what I like about all games, which is the social experience. I've started playing Wingspan collaboratively with my brother and with friends, where we're trying to maximize combined score. And that's kind of the way that I like to play games a lot, which is you have the way that the game is designed to be played, and then you stretch and expand it and find new ways to engage with the content. And so, yeah, we play highest combined score or other ways. So I find that really enjoyable.
Interesting. So do you do that quite often with other games? Like you're looking for ways to expand the experience?
Yeah, I mean, as a game designer, in the same way that like a film critic or someone who studies film can never just see a movie and turn off their film critic brain, as a designer, my game designer brain is always on 100%. So I can still immerse myself in a game, but I love thinking about, okay, what would I do differently, or how do I want to change the experience to keep things fresh? And then I found Wingspan a great way to engage with my family. And so because of that's why I'm really bringing it, because I assume I'm not on the desert island by myself, you know?
What specifically about Wingspan, aside from the fact that it is so popular, and you touched on it, Eurogame and beautiful, pieces. Are there specific things about it that strike you as more special than other games of a similar genre or style? Like, why Wingspan? Why do you think Wingspan has latched on to the zeitgeist?
Well, I think those are two different questions: why it's latched on and what I think is special about it. I think why it's latched on is because of its simplicity. There are very few actions you can take on your turn, and you can play a bird, you can gain food, you can lay eggs, you can gain birds. So very simple in that sense. But then there's the emergent gameplay that comes on top of it. So I think the learning curve is very forgiving. In terms of why I really like it, I like it because there's so many different strategies, emergent strategies that you can employ, especially with the expansions, where like at this point in time, I know I have all of the birds memorized, you know. And so when I play with my brother and we play collaboratively, it's like, oh, I'll take this, you take that, you build in this direction, I'll build in that direction. We'll support each other this way, you know. Like most engine building games are much more. I feel like this strategic diversity of viable best practices, like min maxing, is more narrow.
So, what elements, if any, have you kind of taken on from something like a Wingspan into the way in which you look at games or the way in which you think about game design?
I know we'll talk about this later, but when I went to grad school, like the first thing that you do is when you're designing a game, you think about finding the fun, you know, and that's way more complicated than it should be. You know, fun is there's you can't just design something that is like guaranteed to be fun, right? So I think with Wingspan, what I really like about it is the visual presentation of the birds gives this sense that this engine that you're creating is really this like series of habitats, you know? And there's this like biodiversity element that I think is wrapped up really well into that. I also The whole concept of a game about birds is very most publishers would say, oh, like lean toward a theme that's more tried and true. And so in all forms of design, I'm a big fan of risk taking. And I think Wingspan does that well just in the thematic design.
So then digging into that area a little bit more, explain your journey from, UX design into, actually doing a degree in game design. I don't think I've actually spoken with anyone yet on the show that's actually done that. What was that like?
Yeah. So I actually went shortly after undergrad to get the degree in game design. So it's technically entertainment technology. So it's at the intersection of like theme parks and video games and board games and animation. I went because I'd always wanted to do creative work at scale that impacted people in a powerful way. So games to me seemed like such a strong and powerful way of doing that. When I was there, I realized I didn't really want to work on video games because oftentimes there are ways for people to escape instead of connect with each other. And over time, I really gravitated toward board games because to me, the most important thing in my life is connecting with people that I really care about. And board games are a tremendous way of getting like really high quality time with people that you want to spend time with, even if you don't necessarily have anything in particular to talk about. So after grad school, then I got into UX research, and that's kind of how I support myself while I work on games.
And in terms of like doing a degree that I assume that the degree has kind of video game design as its intended core. Is would that be fair, or is that not
Yeah, I think that's
the
that's
case?
fair. Yeah.
Are there specific concepts, approaches, rabbit holes, whatever you want to call it, that you experienced doing that kind of study? Looking at the differences between designing, let's say, a video game that you feel like are give you a bit more of a unique perspective as versus someone who comes to board game design from a different route.
Totally. Well, I wouldn't want to compare it to someone who comes from board game design from a completely different way because I don't know what their experience is like per se. But for
Sure.
me, with video games, I mentioned before finding the fun, which is when you're prototyping any experience, your primary objective is to find what makes people want to do it, and to lean into that. But also to expand that and focus on how you want players to feel while they're doing something. So I think that that's like a really key idea. So for example, you want players to feel competent. You want players to feel excited. You might want players to feel curious about exploring something new or excited about like completing a task. And then there's lots of different like psychological perspectives to help understand why people want to engage with games, how they want to engage with others. Some people are really driven by teamwork, others competition, others exploration. And it's kind of like, how do you combine all of these into every game to me is kind of like an articulation of this like philosophical view of this idealized world, you know? It's like, you want everyone to be able to feel powerful, so some games help you feel powerful. So every game is really about there's like a lot more behind a game than just what's fun.
It's a really interesting way of explaining it. Like you're not creating a dessert, you're creating a meal.
Yes.
And so part of it is obviously, yeah, let's sprinkle in some sugar and let's figure out what might make you excited. But if you want to make someone feel fulfilled or satiated, there needs to be a little bit more depth there.
What it reminds me of, and this is something I think about like on a weekly basis. I read this review of Monsters University, like the movie a while ago, and the review was like, okay, this is a perfectly decent movie, but the movie makes no argument as to why it deserved to exist. You know? Like, whereas most Pixar movies are like really have this like deep meaning behind them. And games don't need to have deep meaning, but they really need to make an argument for why they deserve to exist. What's special about it? And I think that's the meal quality that you're talking about, that there's something meaty in there and something substantive.
So shifting gears to your substantive, meaty
Yeah.
entry into this area, Inventures. Talk a little bit about it. Like, explain to us what is it and what is it about.
I initially began Inventures wanting to create a game that would allow everyone to kind of build an emergent story and adventure as they go. And to sit somewhere at the intersection of being really appealing to like RPG players and board gamers. And over time, through prototyping, what I really learned is that I wanted to create a game that gave everyone this like improv storytelling feeling, which is like some of the highest quality experiences that I have with my friends are when we're like yes anding about ideas. So the way the game works is it's basically a very simple RPG with a very like elegant, complex core mechanic, which is as a each player, you create your own character. You can play in any setting imaginable. So if you want to be like zoo creatures pitching a business on Shark Tank, you can do that. If you want to be like fantasy characters stuck in a cave, you can do that. You can literally play any adventure, sci-fi, anything. So the way the game works is you create your character. When your character encounters a challenge, you flip over sets of option cards that are symbol based. So for example, you might have, depending on difficulty, 4 options. And option one, if you're trying to cross a bridge, might be like break and tower, you know? And option two might be like give and heart. And so you secretly decide which of these 4 options your character would do, and then other players try to guess. And if they guess successfully, you tell the story about how your action succeeds. So you might say break plus tower means you want to like chop down a tree that falls across the river. So you would explain about how you tried that and how you succeed. So it brings a hell of a lot of creativity into this like um, adventure or storytelling experience. And unlike a lot of really creative based games, there's win loss mechanics. So it's also very challenging. So I wanted to create a game that's really about creativity and about storytelling and really focuses on maximizing quality time with the people that you're playing with.
It sounds really interesting in terms of just giving people, especially those who are creative, like different ways to play with a whole bunch of different, as you say, kind of elegant, complex underlying mechanics, but wrapping it into a very accessible layer. How do you balance the permission to be creative with the worry of directionless travel that some people, especially those who aren't used to improv or that don't feel that they're creative, might feel? Like, what's the entry point, or is there a container or a constraint that they can experience in order
Yeah.
to help them develop that character? Does that make sense?
Yeah, totally. And I think that's a real trade off. So the first part of the answer is the question of who's the game for and how do you want players to feel? And I wanted to create a game that was really welcoming to everyone. So whether you're used to creative storytelling or an improv person, or whether you're more of like an adventure person, or you just like co-op games, I wanted the game to be exciting and super fun for everyone. Um, and so generally the way the game provides its own structure through the simple cards and through like other sets of cards that help you guide and create structure in your adventure. And then the game also, I really wanted to focus on like an onboarding and learning mechanic to make the game easy to learn. So basically, a lot of video games have like these built-in tutorial experiences that are, um, it's these days tutorials are like part of the story and part of the game instead of this outside experience. So I wanted to make the game really easy to learn and also just really provide the bones so that what you're doing is you're putting the meat on the bones and articulating the bones. And so you don't have to worry about things going completely off the rails. So for example, you agree at the beginning what the theme is and what your characters are and what your goal is for the adventure. So you're not going to suddenly like encounter spaceships unless if you're in a Western context, unless you kind of agreed to that in the beginning.
I love the idea that it can be whatever you want it to be, but once you decide what you want it to be, then there's actually some structure there. Are you tempted? Like, why approach it like that, where it's relatively open world, open genre, versus skinning it? Saying we're going to do one version of it that provides a little bit more focus, and then release other ones. Is there thinking behind that, or are you or is that part of the plan?
I wanted to make something as replayable as possible and that allows you to really like, I don't know, I've played like 300 or 400 games of Inventures at this point in time. And from the outside, no two of them even seem like they came from the same box, you know? And that's the power of the symbol cards, which is how interpretable, like how many different interpretations you could have of them. So a tower, like in an undersea adventure, can represent one thing, and in sci-fi can represent another. And so, yes, I could have just created a more, and I mean, later on, I'd love to talk about this, which is how do you brand and market a game that is literally in every setting? It's insane.
Yeah, I'm very interested in that.
Yeah. In hindsight, I might have done things differently, but only because of the ability to like market and communicate what the game is, you know?
From a player perspective,
Right.
You're making a strategic choice or a specific choice because you want that replayability to happen in a whole bunch of different directions rather than just in one genre. Would
Exactly.
that be fair?
Yeah, exactly. And the game comes with a booklet that contains instructions and ideas for characters. The game also comes with some default characters so that when you start, you don't have to create your own characters. So the default characters are fantasy characters to kind of welcome people to the world. But you know, also I've played games where I play myself, and my friends play themselves, and we're on a camping trip, you know, and I didn't want to like get in the way of allowing people to have beautiful experiences with my game by limiting it too much. But there is a huge value to structure even from a gameplay experience.
And so when thinking about like the who it's for, as you're saying, it comes across as something that, or one might on the surface think that this is a game for people who love to have, or who think of themselves as having large imaginations, who are very creative, who are very extrovert. But I know that you're also quite keen on going against that a little bit. And so like how do you approach that element of your ideal player? How can you create a game that is fundamentally a storytelling game that appeals to both introverts and extroverts? Or maybe that's just an unfair question.
No, I think that's exactly it. And I think there's a lot of false dichotomies that we kind of perpetuate unintentionally as designers, right? And one is that, an extrovert loves games where there's like negotiation and argument and trading, and introverts love games where it's more like optimization of your own or like Euro games, right? And I really wanted to create a game where there's enough structure so that if you're introverted, you can lean on the material in front of you. And also because it's collaborative, like, frankly, I just love collaborative games because you really get to feel like everyone is on your team. And so the cards provide enough structure that really what my game is about isn't just storytelling. It's about understanding how your teammates work and how they think. Um, and so the more that you play with the same group of people, the better you get. And there's this like lovely experience of like really understanding how your friends or your family thinks by playing the game. So for people, the game also provides structure. So there's nobody like dominates the game. So you don't have to worry about like speaking too little or speaking too much, whether you're introverted or extroverted. And also this creativity component. I think a lot of people like, oh, I'm not creative. But they think about creativity as this like blue sky envisioning, whereas if you just give them some prompts, it's much easier to work with.
Exactly. Give some slight structure, and then the creativity can blossom from within that. So you've been working on Inventures, like it's clearly very well thought out. You've been working on it for a while, but is it right? You've been working on it for about 4 years.
Yeah.
So how has it changed over the course of that time?
I mean, the original game looked.
It started off as an area control game.
It's kind of started off as like more of a conventional RPG, where you have stats and you have dice and all of these things. And Inventures has no dice. And over time, I was like, okay, this is fun, but this is very similar to other games that are out there. And I also wanted to create something that was more like, I love games like Dixit and Code Names and that have this like interesting collaborative like theory of, sometimes they're called theory of mind games, sometimes social deduction, but it's not like a conventional social deduction game. So I leaned into that and worked on the symbol cards. And I originally started, there's this amazing artist who runs a site called Angelarium. And there are these angels, like he makes like these decks of cards of angels and posters of angels. And they're just like the angel of rain or the angel of what have you. And originally the idea was like, okay, you're encountering a challenge. You have to pick which angel you would pray to, basically. And other players would try to guess. And then from there, I was like, no, symbol cards. And I started using like tarot decks, and I realized like the power of symbols and symbol interpretation instead of dice. And then there's just like a metric crap ton of tweaking of a lot of different things over the past couple of years.
And in terms of like when you were experiencing, like how do you play test, or did you approach playtesting in a slightly different way when it came to this kind of combination, partly RPG, partly more typical mechanics for other kind of tabletop genres? How would you efficiently be able to find the fun, for example, or figure out if somebody was just not feeling the game because they weren't the target audience versus there was something fundamentally needing to be fixed about the game in that state?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So there's a few parts to it. Obviously, a lot of the playtesting was done during the pandemic, playing remotely. And so, I had everything up on Tabletop Simulator. And the real question and the real challenge for a lot of designers is not everyone will find everything fun. And so you have to really think about, okay, what is the core experience here? And find the people for whom the core experience is fun, and then optimize for those people. And also to try to figure out how representative they are of this broader population or demographic that you're trying to target, right? So in addition to playtesting with a lot of people who've never played the game before, I playtested with my friend group and kind of iterated and iterated. And it was like, okay, here's this new like leveling up mechanic. Is this fun or does it detract from the core experience? And then what is the core experience? So yeah, and that's where I learned that, this might not be the game for a lot of people who are like much more about like mathematical optimization in games. I was like, that's fine. I still think, if you like games like Codenames, Dixit, there's still like a huge percent of the population who love Inventures.
So then shifting on to how you actually market a game like this. You hinted before, you're like, maybe you do some things differently, but what are the kind of challenges when it comes to trying to articulate what can be done when lots could be done?
Oh my God. Honestly, this is like the night, like designing the game was the easy part compared to this, which is, for most games, the primary marketing asset is the box cover. And the box cover attempts to communicate a few different things. If a game doesn't have a particularly novel mechanic or fits within a conventional theme, or it comes from a designer or a publisher that people know and associate with particular things, the box cover is simple. It's like you have a game about, the Easter Island. You just put like a Easter Island head on the cover and people are like, okay, I get it. But when a game has like a very different mechanic, it's much more challenging. So I've been going back and forth on different box designs. And the real question is like, what do I want? What is the primary thing I want to communicate? The primary thing I wanted to communicate is having fun with friends in a creative setting. And so I toyed around with, okay, have represent lots of different settings on the box, represent one setting and show players solving problems. Like if I showed everything that I wanted to, it'd be way too visually overwhelming. So I honestly think that's the whole point of themes for games, is that it just simplifies what you're trying to communicate to an audience.
And do you think you've managed to toe that line, or is it still kind of evolving?
So the part that I'm still figuring out is how to communicate, particularly on social media, to people about what it's like to play the game and the core gameplay experience. So coming up, I'll be filming a lot. And by the time this airs, I'll have already filmed like playthrough sessions and kind of snippets of gameplay that kind of encapsulate the primary experience and kind of boil it down. But in a game like, for example, Codenames, you could have like a 30-second snippet of like, oh, my clue is pirates for 3. And then other people guess and you're like, okay, I get it, right? Um, Another interesting challenge is for a lot of board games that are more like Euro games or more like optimization games, to understand the game, you will need to see what's on the board, right? What's on the table. And for my game, what you really need to see is how people are reacting to the experience. Because I don't think I've ever played a game where nobody has laughed, or like every time I play the game, everyone laughs, and there's just a huge amount of laughter. And that's like the core output of the experience, as opposed to like optimizing an engine, you know?
Interesting. And so the game is live on Kickstarter now, and you've been working on it for a while. This is your first game, is that right?
Yeah.
So why the Kickstarter route? Why did you choose from a business perspective that to be the right route versus, let's say, approaching a publisher or looking to self-publish in another way?
Yeah. So I'm also a writer, probably unsurprisingly. I'm a creative person. And when you write, you realize to what extent like publishers are kind of gatekeepers of the publishing industry, unsurprisingly. And there's like lots of economic reasons for that. And I'm not critical of game publishers or anything like that. But I also wanted to give myself the challenge of like learning about marketing and like learning about all of these things, and I'm big on like learning new things. And in terms of why Kickstarter in particular, there's like a successful track record there. Obviously, there's like other platforms, but yeah, I wanted to lean on myself and see what happened.
And how has the experience been for you from a business perspective? Like, have you enjoyed it so far? Have you gotten, aside from maybe trying to figure out the route? Like, are there specific frustrations? Are there things that you think you've learned or you've taken on board, that you're very glad that that you experienced early on?
Yeah, so there's a lot that's frustrating. I mean, I think what most people who are kind of frequent backers of Kickstarter projects know is that when you actually pitch a game on Kickstarter, the whole thing has to be completed. So it's very challenging from an economic perspective to, design a game, get prototypes made, ship them out, all of these things. There's so much more on the back end, the logistics of shipping costs and all of, and I have like shipping estimates on the site that are, confirmed estimates for different places from a shipping partner, right? So like you have like 40,000 different hats in a closet, and the closet is just packed full of hats. And you're like, okay, today I'm like a logistics expert, like today I'm thinking about like manufacturing materials. And it's like the game designer hat is just one of those hats, you know? So in retrospect, I wish I'd known that and found people to work with.
I know that you're in the middle of it right now, but what's next? Are you sticking with Inventures? Are you working on other games?
Yeah, so a few different things are next. I definitely want to stick with Inventures and see what other kinds of experiences that I can create that kind of connect with that core mechanic. So, for example, something along the lines of like adding map making and that experience to the game. Adding just trying to add more depth and richness. There's that. I also write a lot of horror poetry, like gothic horror poetry. So eventually I'll be putting on Kickstarter a poetry collection that's like kind of like a more modern version of like Edgar Allan Poe stuff for like, campfire reading and spooky stories. But they're like actually very scary. Um, yeah, so lots of different things for me, but I'm really excited to support Inventures and to really like expand this genre of game that combines like the creative storytelling part and simple interpretation.
How would you describe Inventures to someone who you think is like the core audience or the core player that you want to reach?
Yeah. So if you are a board gamer and you love sitting around and you really play games because you want to get the most out of your social time with people and really vibe, and everything is about, okay, how do I really interact with the people that I'm playing with the most? If you like games like Code Names or Dixit, if you like games where you're really trying to like build this to get on the same wavelength as people, the game's for you. If you like improv, creative storytelling, any kind of creative activity, art, anything like that, or are just excited about role playing and kind of creating worlds and creating experiences with friends, then Inventures is definitely for you.
Well, Alexander, thank you so much for taking some time to share your experience, to geek out a little bit about Wingspan, and to kind of join with me today. If anybody out there would like to find out more about Inventures, you can find it, information on Instagram by going to Inventures_game as the username. You can also search Facebook by entering an Inventure Quest, and it is on Kickstarter right now. You can find a link to the Kickstarter information in the description wherever you're watching or listening to this. Alexander, thank you again for joining me.
Thanks, Robert. It's been a great experience.